I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone who is a very dear friend and someone who is a very dear friend of every American and every person of the world that cherishes freedom. Kirk Wiebe has put his life on the line for decades against the syndicate. When many people didn't believe that there was actually a syndicate within the private sector or public sector. Kirk is the whistleblower's whistleblower, if you will. He plowed a lot of ground for the current whistleblowers, whether it's Ed Snowden or what Julian Assange has done over the years, or any whistleblower that's come forward from the government. For those of you not familiar with Kirk, he is a retired National Security Agency whistleblower who worked at the agency for over 32 years. And during his tenure there, Kirk received numerous awards, including the NSA's Meritorious Civilian Service Award, that agency's second highest distinction for work against foreign strategic weapons systems. Kirk, together with colleagues Bill Binney and Diane Rourke and Ed Loomis, blew the whistle on NSA's mismanagement and waste of billions of dollars in a complaint to the Defense Department Inspector General. Of course, that the syndicate did everything in their power to make sure that that information that they were bringing forward did not see the light of day. And unable to stay at the NSA at that point in good conscience, Kirk, along with colleagues Binney and Loomis, retired in October 2001. And since retiring, Kirk has made several key public disclosures regarding NSA's massive surveillance program subverting the United States Constitution. You know, when Kirk came out with this information, and Bill and Diane Loomis, or Ed Loomis and Diane Rourke, when they came out with this information in 2001, they were demonized. And they were targeted. In fact, the head of the FBI at that point was Robert Mueller. And Robert Mueller sent a gang of FBI thugs into Bill's home. I think Bill was walking out of the shower, if I remember correctly, and there was a guy who pointed a gun at him. Into Kirk's home. Essentially, I don't know, you might want to say ransacked your home and took computers and took documents out of your home, all for telling the truth. And now, in 2025, most people say, well, yeah, that sounds about right. But in 2001, when it happened, many people were saying, oh, that could not be the case, that our government would be involved in such nefarious activities such as illegal surveillance and then targeting the very people that spoke truth to power. Well, that's what happened. It's my honor to welcome back the great Kirk Wiebe. Kirk, welcome back.
Dave, it is, as always, a great honor to be on your program. Thank you.
So, Kirk, I want to delve into two issues today. One is that are getting a lot of play, if you will, in the tech world. One is AI, and the second is the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, of which I actually feel as though you and Bill Binney are kind of the godfathers of the Department of Government Efficiency. But let's first start with AI, because you wrote a recent piece on AI, and I just want to read the first paragraph, if I might, and then have you take it from there. Because sure. All of our IT people, you know, Nick, our Director of IT Services at DaveJanda.com and Operation Freedom, and his entire gang of people, and he's very networked throughout the IT world, they read your 1 page, 1.5 page document, and they said it is the best document describing AI.
I'm flattered.
And they're very stingy with their positive comments, might I say, and rightfully so, right there. But they all came to the same conclusion. This is the best document written on AI. And here's what you say. AI isn't really intelligence. What AI represents is the capability to examine huge amounts of information and make sense of it. However, AI is not about the ability to understand a bunch of stuff. It is most useful when it is focused on a particular subject, in particular, the data associated with a particular subject. AI attempts to find patterns in such data, then assign meaning to patterns the software identifies in the data. In other words, data to patterns, patterns to meaning, meaning to knowledge. Kirk, educate and empower all of us on AI.
Well, it is a huge subject, technically speaking. Mm-hmm. And the way it's been bantied around, as you know, Dave, it's everything from magic to hocus pocus. And no one ever breaks it down in simple terms so that the average person, the average housewife, anyone could say, oh, okay, I get that. Mm-hmm. I get that. So that's what led me to write the paper that I shared with you. And let's go a layer deeper than what's in the paper.
Let's go ahead with it.
Because I could certainly make that paper a 25-pager,
right.
But no one would read it in today's day and age.
That's true. In this day and age of TikTok, 30-second sound bites, yeah, you got that right. Yeah. Right.
So let's start with the topic of knowledge, because AI is not an end game. It's a means to develop knowledge in useful information. That's what I like to think of as knowledge. Mm-hmm. Some knowledge is not really useful. It's out there, but no one ever uses it. How many times has the average person used the Pythagorean theorem
right.
in their day-to-day life? They don't, nor is it necessary in most cases. But I'm talking about useful data, useful information. Now, here's the good and the danger built in to this seeking of knowledge. It all begins with data. I'll call that raw data. Data that is not really refined and synthesized in something greater that has meaning. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's just noise. Mm-hmm. So AI requires to be fed. It's a giant, hungry beast, a machine. Think of it as a giant machine thirsty for data. Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of data? Well, ask yourself, what's the question you want to ask? Mm-hmm. Because that's going to define the subject matter. Mm-hmm. Without a subject, you have a bunch of white noise. Everything around you in life is comprised of data, information, and knowledge. And you can overdose yourself immediately in any particular domain of knowledge. So that you have to start out with specificity. What is the question you want to answer? Once you can describe that then points to data mm-hmm. that could be meaningful in answering or forming an answer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe not right away, maybe only partially, because you haven't got your arms around all of the relevant data. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So data selection is key, Dave, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. because just as a computer is only as good as the data you put into it, mm-hmm. if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
It's also true of human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Right. Yeah, it's the
and
same.
There are so many parallels to the way humans process data and how we're trying to get machines to process data. So many parallels. So you have to get the relevant data. Mm-hmm. To the degree you don't, the result that pops out at the end of the process will be incomplete and therefore biased in some regard. This is the danger.
Mm-hmm.
This is the pitfall.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It's the same thing with humans.
Mm-hmm.
If you only have partial information, the odds are you're going to make a mistake in your understanding of that information. So it's critical that the data that is chosen be correct,
Mm-hmm.
Have integrity, be represented correctly so that the machine processes it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And it must be all aspects of the subject so that you get a rounded, wholesome, if you will, result. You build a solid foundation
Mm-hmm.
for all the computer processing that's going to happen as the next step. So the data selection is critical. You can make or break AI in that step alone. Now the next task is, how do I process the data? How do I weight the contributing data?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What if you have 12 sources of data feeding an AI algorithm? And I'm going to call the algorithm the software that's going to process the data to find patterns
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and ultimately meaning. So the algorithm itself and how it views the data and uses it must be carefully thought through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or again, you will not get it right.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be partial or it'll be biased,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's another danger point, and that is the algorithm itself going against the data and how to weight that information. Now, once you then achieve some sense of pattern recognition,
Mm-hmm.
you can go against the data set that you created, and the software hopefully finds patterns, similarities
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
throughout the data. Now, once you begin to see similarities, the question is, what does that mean?
Right.
Without meaning, you have nothing.
Right.
It's just stuff,
Mm-hmm.
interesting stuff, but you can't weight it. It could be a breakthrough. It could be nothing. So the question is, or the task then is, to assemble and understand the similarities in data and then achieve an understanding. Now, how do you do that? Well, you've got to look at the outcomes that you're seeing in the subject and try to correlate. This is where the word correlation is important. And you know, if you stop and think about it, actually, I'm describing scientific method.
It's true.
I mean, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
And you could call AI the scientific method of data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you really could. So you want to correlate with things you know
Mm-hmm.
or can observe.
Mm-hmm.
And as you do that and build meaning, now you're building the foundation for knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a formal step, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Once you go from patterns and meaning, and you're going to decree, it's really a process of decreeing or blessing that something you can state is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's fact.
Mm-hmm.
It's repeatable. It's observable.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're entering that formal domain of knowledge. And knowledge is not always an end unto itself. It's part of a larger
Process.
whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then once again, you find yourself correlating knowledge with other knowledge to see if you open a greater aperture of understanding, because that's the process that we all want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding is the ultimate goal for that particular domain of knowledge based on the question you were asking. And this is repeated, this what sounds like a complex, and it is, but the wonderful thing about AI is it's simply a term to say we're beginning to get good enough with massive data storage and massive data processing that we can now unleash the speed of computing against carefully selected data and make discoveries much, much faster than what has been traditional. I'm going to refer an article here in a moment that I found where science has built a gene of our genetic makeup, a gene, except it isn't human, it's plant-like. But they developed a gene, Dave, that if left to evolve by itself, naturally, would have taken 500 million years. Now, stop and think of that implication. I can describe something and maybe even synthesize it, make it, build it. You know, we're on the edge of creating life here. In fact, I have another article that says we've done it already in Australia, a type of mushroom. Anyway, and this is also another danger. It's wondrous that we can do this and that we can advance evolution and we can advance. The scary part is we have no idea about the ramifications of doing that. Nothing is isolated in our world. There's always nexus points with other things that are going on. Are we going to unleash something we can't deal with, something unfathomable? I don't know. But science needs to define a discipline for itself, an ethic.
A gatekeeper, if you will.
Exactly right.
And Nick has talked about that and his team about a Hippocratic oath, if you will, as it relates to AI. Well, and which is great, and I agree with that. But, you know, we saw the Hippocratic oath get taken down, well, some people will say for decades, but most recently apparent in 2019, right? With the whole this and all that. So we need that Hippocratic oath in AI, but we also need to stick to it, because when we get off the rails, you know, you can get into some really bad stuff, mainly death and destruction, as we saw, right, in the medical side of the equation. So, Kirk, who should be the gatekeepers on this?
Well, you know, the automatic answer would be a panel of experts, but I resist the temptation to do that. Right. Because they're part of the people you're trying to gatekeep for. Right. So I would get a jury, 12 is a good number, of American citizens that are that in their own right are smart people, they're educated, they have good track records, just good people all the way around, and empanel them and let them make their suggestions on this is going too far, maybe go this far, but don't go that far. I mean, we need transparency because, as you know, Dave, there'll be geeks everywhere trying to break the barriers and the rules. Right. There always will be. The one thing mankind has been very poor about, as you know, is self-discipline. Yeah, we always end up screwing things up. We do. And this, as you say, the ramifications of this could be horrendous.
Right. And they also could be incredibly positive. So let's talk. Yeah. So in your mind's eye, let's look at the good, the bad, the ugly of AI. Yep. So, Kirk, the absolute good that could come out of AI that you see.
The absolute good is wondrous. I'll repeat the word, wondrous discovery. enlightening man's mind to new ways of viewing things that exist in the universe, and allowing mankind to perhaps shave hundreds of years off of understanding that would otherwise take forever to get. That is applicable to every field, but mostly to the data intensive areas, like science. And I think of medicine, I think of space, the universe. There's so much information, so much, the data stores. If you could tap into every medical database and research database in the world, on the planet, imagine the opportunity to correlate. Now, one thing holding that back might be this thing called standards. Does Japan describe things in a way that our computers can consume? So there may be some data translation points, and that's got to be careful with that. Anytime you start translating, more opportunities. But the wondrous promise of that is just mind-boggling.
That's the good side. Okay, bad and ugly side of AI.
I use insight, and this probably applies largely to the area of physics, where I can learn and see new ways of destroying things, harnessing energy, that I hadn't realized were there. We're now developing directed energy weapons, lasers. The Buck Rogers of the 1950s is here. Flash Gordon, Ming the Merciless, all of that is here now. We're there. It's being kept under wraps because it's considered national security. But we're in that realm where we can literally melt an aircraft, for example. So the discovery of how to harness and use, and as you know, you can build a knife, Dave, and I can use it to cut meat or I can stab you with it. And this is the same deal. I'm going to open insights to things that can be used maliciously to destroy or end life.
And that's not unique. Many people believe that's just unique to AI. I mean, Kirk, come on. I mean, that's life, right? I mean, just look. When you and Bill and Ed and Diane, it was a system that was used to keep our country safe, right? But you guys became whistleblowers because you found that some nefarious actor, human, not AI, took that system that was there to protect people and was using it in a criminal fashion to actually harm people.
Absolutely. And there's always this thing called ethic and law that should constrain people, but people are willing to not observe ethics or break laws. That's going to be a continuing issue and the danger field for this whole area.
One of the generators of breaking ethics and laws is money, right?
Absolutely.
So when we look at AI, you see people like Elon Musk pushing for open AI, an open system where it's not essentially privately owned, right? And we just saw this come out of China with DeepSeek, an open AI platform that is open to the public, not a private entity, right?
Yes.
So a component, if you will, if money is a big, it's not the only, but it's a big driving force of a lack of pushing aside ethics, pushing aside law. If you have an open system, you're not bulletproof, but on the other hand, it takes a lot of that money equation out of it. Am I off on that I'm thinking that way?
No, you're not. You're not. No one should own AI per se. You can own the implementation process. You know, you're a company that sells software, hardware, computers. Sure.
Yeah.
Data storage. Sure. Do that. But in terms of understanding the process, what goes into it, and the dangers and the pluses is absolutely important. That, you can't own knowledge. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
And all humans are deserving of exposure to knowledge. They choose whether to absorb it or not, or to study it or not. But it should be an open decision. And this ethics part and constraint part, that's why I suggest a panel of 12 simple folk, good people from society, serve as the national conscience. And that role could change every couple of years. You could do it nicely. And like you say, it's not perfect.
Right. Well, you've also suggested that same type of platform dealing with the surveillance state.
Yes.
Right?
You're right.
Before the AI conversation, and he said, look, you don't need all these, high-level tech people. You need 12 honest people to be a jury over how this is used, whether it's AI, whether it's the surveillance state, whatever it might be. It's all the same.
It's funny you say that, because just the other day, 2 days ago, I was thinking about that very thing. In fact, I was thinking about emailing Judge Napolitano, who I like to bounce legal stuff against from time to time. If you are honest and stand back, go to the 50,000 foot level and look at surveillance and data monitoring, we are entering a time where data usage, data gathering, if you will, is almost universal. It's in the business world. It's in the marketing world. It's in the medical world. It's in the spy world. But at what point do you just call a spade and say, you know what? It's not a secret anymore. Everybody's gathering information. So let's cut the FISA garbage. Where people can manipulate. We need openness, as you said. Anything that's powerful should be transparent to humanity. We need to get it back in the open, like our typical justice system. Follow the law, Fourth Amendment, right? You can't access people's private data at will. You must have a reason to do it. Probable cause is my thinking. And name the thing you want to search. Well, that's what AI says. What's the thing you want to know about? So I'm seeing more parallels with Article 3 of the Constitution, where we have Article 3 courts and no need. In fact, it's deleterious to create carve-outs that are secreted away. The more we do that, the more we deny law and equal justice under the Constitution.
And in fact, AI could be an incredible tool, and really is, for transparency, right?
Absolutely.
Which brings me to a living, breathing entity that is using algorithms and, I believe, an AI approach through DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, which is basically about gathering data and making it transparent for the world to see, which is causing immense blowback from whatever you want to call it, the deep state, the globalist cult, the globalist syndicate, the New World Order crowd, the criminal international banking syndicate, all the same, right? So here's an example of the blowback. Bill Kristol, this supposed conservative, right, was they directed this about, DOGE and Trump and what they're doing on the transparency front. Bill Kristol admits the quiet part out loud. This is from Steve Watson. Quote, "The deep state is far preferable to the Trump state." End quote. Here's what he said. Now, by the way, this is the same guy, by the way, who went after people like me for talking about the deep state. He for years, he was saying the deep state did not exist. These people are crazy and the like. Okay, so now, good old Billy, the deep state, right? He, by the way, maybe the reason why he said this, Kirk, he is president of an entity called he's president, actually, of Defending Democracy, an entity that, unfortunately for him, when transparency hit, and the Dogistas, as I call them, got into analyzing the data associated with USAID, it has nothing to do with aid, it's CIA front. Turns out that his entity was an indirect beneficiary of USAID money through the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. These people are petrified, Kirk, of data, and in particular, the transparency that data brings to the forefront, which is why they are targeting Musk and Trump and DOGE. Am I off on that assessment?
No, you are spot on. Spot on. And this judge who ruled you can't go into Treasury and access data,
it's the data. It's the data. They want the data hidden, and what data is presented to the public, what the truthful stuff is parsed out little bits, but they manipulate the data so the public gets bad info, and has for decades.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. They cover it up with propaganda, psyops, every tool in the book. Absolutely. And now we have rogue judges ruling that the executive can't do executive work. Oh, my goodness. Supreme Court's got to deal with this within a week.
I agree with you, because this is a blatant separation of powers issue.
It is.
How can a judge come in and say, no, you can't do that in the executive branch? What?
Absolutely right. It's crazy. Just crazy.
So, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is being spearheaded by what are called 20-year-old autists. This is per Wired magazine. These young engineers are reportedly forcing high-level GSA employees on calls to, quote, go over the code they've written and justify their jobs, end quote. And some people are saying, well, imagine this, a 30-year-old veteran bureaucrat, okay, bought and paid for probably, in most cases, not all, but most, are being fired by 17-year-old autistic engineers with a laptop. And to that I say, if the data and the transparency shows that 30-year-old, quote, veteran has been abusing the system or has not been doing their job, well, okay, good. Where's the problem?
Exactly.
So somebody wrote this about DOGE. It goes back to what you were saying about AI and patterns and data. The pattern that DOGE is using is devastating in its simplicity. 1, they map the money flows. 2, they deploy aligned personnel. 3, they expose the networks. And 4, they restructure the systems.
What's the matter with that?
I don't know. I think it's
great.
And Musk just came out with about the opposition. Because they're talking about, Maxine Waters, she's one to talk, right? With her track record of money laundering. Maxine Waters. Yeah, right? Oh, they're all out of control. They're hysterical. Here's what Musk said. They're hiding massive fraud, and they don't want their grift to end. This is how we know we're over the target. Everything DOGE does will be published for the world to see. Let the public judge for themselves. Kirk, that's exactly what you said.
Exactly right.
And what they do is they utilize that process of data and pattern recognition, creating meaning, creating knowledge, and that light of knowledge is showing the criminality in our government. Is that a false? Am I reading this wrong?
No, you are absolutely right. They're putting sunshine on dark streets that have been hidden for decades.
So if Elon Musk calls you up today, Kirk, and says, "Hey, Kirk, you're like the original DOGista. You're the godfather of the DOGE movement. Tell me how you think I should, where we should go with this." What would you tell him?
Oh, I would tell them, stay on course. What you're doing is marvelous. We might be able to round out the process a little bit, make sure you keep records, make sure we keep it simple so that we can educate the public what's going on, and that we have enough information to prosecute if we stumble upon actual criminal activity, which of course they're going to find. But otherwise, the direction is wonderful. God bless President Trump for setting this process in motion. Was someone who I believe genuinely cares about doing the right thing for the American people.
Yeah, and no matter how they try to control him and leverage him, it's not working so far.
No, it's not. No.
Or the DOGistas. You know, they tend to say, oh, these are about 17-year-old kids. Well, Kirk, you and I both know. Yeah, there's some 17-year-old kids there, right? But there's some big shooters that are in those data centers looking at those patterns the minute that data comes in, right?
Absolutely. And Elon's judgment of technical prowess, I think, is amongst the best available in the planet.
Just look at his track record.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just look what he did. Okay, let's leave Tesla aside. Look at SpaceX. He blew by NASA. He blew by NASA
in a few years.
Right. Right?
Absolutely right.
With far less, I mean, he got a bunch of money behind him, but far less money behind what he did in SpaceX than the probably trillions that have been dumped into NASA over the past 50 years.
Absolutely right. Talk about ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Dave, when I saw that gantry catch a rocket,
I know.
The rocket backs into it and adjusts. Thump. I said, oh, my God, the skill, the knowledge to be able to vector machinery in such a way that can occur. Oh my gosh. Just fantastic.
And really, that was the result of AI.
It's true.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, if you want a living example of the positive of what AI can do, you know, he sped up the entire process, and the only way he could have done that was with an AI platform, right? He sped up that entire, if you will, Rocket Man, in quotes, Rocket Man operation, where he had a rocket being caught.
Yes.
By a gantry. I mean, so if people want to know, well, you know, AI, it's just out there. It's not. No. That occurred because of AI.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And ultimately, what's happening here in this reaction to DOGE and this vilification of DOGE and Musk, they're being vilified by the criminals that have not been transparent to the public, that have been operating behind the curtain in a criminal syndicate fashion. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So you mentioned earlier, Kirk, that the Supreme Court needs to get involved in the next week to end this. And I agree. And there are certain members of that court I trust,
Yes.
but there are many of them I don't.
Yes. If anything recent history has taught me, and I always seek to learn, always. I'll never stop being that way, and neither will you. You thirst for knowledge. But what I've learned is how relatively weak our third branch of government is.
Yeah.
The justice, there's no constraint. Mm-mm. Well, there are, but it's a tedious, drawn out reaction when corruption occurs in justice. You shouldn't have things drawn out 6 months, a year, 2 years to answer to the corruption. There's something missing in our process.
So what happens, like look at Trump and how they demonized him and dragged him through the courts for years, right?
Right.
You and I couldn't afford that. No one we know could afford that. Very few people in our country could afford that, one of which is fortunately Trump. But you get these people that say, well, you have to let the system play out. You have to let no, wait. There should be, if you will, an emergency brake when there's gross violations in the judicial system. Now, our Constitution says Supreme Court. The problem is, like with the election interference in 2020, the Supreme Court was brought a case where a state was suing another case when Texas and Florida sued Pennsylvania and the like. According to the Constitution, they were mandated, they had to hear that case. But they didn't. So the Supreme Court in that case truly acted unconstitutionally.
It did. It did.
We have a broken Supreme Court because, for example, all these judges saying, oh, we don't like that. So yeah, executive branch, you can't do that. You can't do the USAID thing. You can't hand data over to in the Treasury Department to the Treasury Secretary. Right? They're saying, what? There should be a process in place where you don't have to wait a week or a day, maybe an hour, before the Supreme Court weighs in and says, stop. We're not going to let the process play out for weeks or months or years, God forbid.
Right.
And I think that comes down to the head of the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts.
Yeah. Or the other justices. I don't see anything in the Constitution that says the process has to be slow. No. In fact, what did people typically say? Justice delayed is justice denied.
Right.
What is this? We're accepting huge time periods to resolve what should be fairly simple. So we've gone down the wrong path somewhere, and I don't know how we short or set things right. But you're right. We need a rapid response capability to stop corruption. I see damage occurring as a result of this across society. Things left dangling and unresolved in the law can only hurt people. How do you jail J6ers without a trial and hold them
for years? For years. No, this is that's Soviet-style gulag an operation.
Exactly. How do we tolerate that as a nation? Unconscionable.
It's
in any country.
It's evil. It's evil.
Yeah, it's evil. I agree.
So let's leave it at this, Kirk. AI is let's go back to the rocket, is beyond a booster rocket if used appropriately with appropriate safeguards. It's an incredible booster rocket for humanity and based on knowledge.
Absolutely.
And DOGE can be a booster rocket if used appropriately, which it has been so far, for transparency and accountability.
Exactly, because of the knowledge they're accruing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes down to knowledge.
It really does.
It all comes down to accurate data, pattern recognition, that then transforms into meaning, that is then transformed, as you said in your incredible piece, knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to spread hopium, but I actually feel better about the world today than I did a year ago. Am I off?
No. It's funny. I was thinking this morning while I was taking a shower, should I bring that up? I actually feel much more optimistic after January 20th than I have for a very long time. I've been very troubled. Not to the point where I wasn't drinking alcohol. It didn't make me go bonkers.
You didn't drink two Dr. Pepper cherry zeros.
Well, I did that.
Did you? Yeah, that's as well. Yeah.
But no behavior altering substances. Yeah. And my faith in God was very important, I think, during this period. But thank God the Lord gave us Donald Trump and people like Elon, people like Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, RFK, people who genuinely care about this nation and its future. Because, Dave, I don't think the average person realized
no, I agree.
We came this close to losing it all.
I believe, Kirk, if things had gone a different way on November 5th, then many people say this is hyperbole, but I believe it's true based on the information I was getting and the blowback I was getting, that this conversation we just had would never have occurred.
Agree.
That I think both of us, along with many people we know, would have been imprisoned by now.
Yes.
And
at a FEMA camp.
And I don't think we would have seen the end of the year.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's not hyperbole.
No.
It's not.
No, it's not. It's not.
I know what it feels like being raided.
Yeah. And this would have been the ultimate raid on all of us.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, Dave.
I thank you, Kirk. You are a national treasure and a national hero. I thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will continue to do, much to the chagrin, might I say, of the globalist cults, globalist syndicate, and deep state.
Arm in arm, Dave, we're all taking it on. And they will lose.
Oh, yeah. And the south side of Chicago in me comes out, and they're not only going to lose, Kirk, they're going to get annihilated.
I think you're right. This could be the end.
Yeah, it is.
Of the evil empire.
Yeah. I thank you, Kirk, and I thank you, folks, for joining us. Until next time, Dave Jandis signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.